Hello and welcome to the Responsive Family Sleep Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Hawley, holistic sleep coach, lactation consultant, peaceful parenting educator, and mom. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by all the conflicting sleep info, frustrated with sleep information that just plain felt wrong, or searched desperately for a truly gentle and responsive sleep approach, then you are in the right place. In each episode, we'll be answering your most pressing baby and toddler sleep questions, busting those sleep myths, and helping you understand truly developmental, biologically normal baby and toddler sleep, plus encouraging you to trust your intuition along the way. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to this week's episode. We are doing another realistic expectations episode, this time on younger toddlers. So think 12 to 24 months, our 1-year-olds. And 1-year-olds they're different than 2-year-olds, right? I know people throw around toddler with a very big age range. I hear people use it anything from 1 to 5, which kind of makes me scratch my head a bit, but okay. I think of toddlers 1 to 3, and then 3 to 5 is preschool, and that 3 is a little bit of a, gray zone. But we're talking about the younger toddlers, right? The 12 to 24 months olds. And I think of them as baby toddlers because they are toddlers, and you can absolutely see it in them asserting their opinions, having big dramatic reactions, really starting to grow into themselves. And they're still so young. Their language comprehension is, it's growing, but they're not, they're still not always understanding, not always able to communicate. And they're still babies. They're still so young. And I think we forget about that. They're still babies in so many ways. The neuroscientists say that infancy is 0 to 3 years from a neurological, brain development perspective. And I think that's a good thing to keep in mind, that means all of infancy and toddlerhood, so 0 to 3, is actually brain infancy. So good thing to keep in mind. So our baby toddlers, our young toddlers, are just kind of in this in-between space where sometimes maybe we do need more of a toddler kind of parenting strategy approach, and sometimes we need to just remember that they do in fact still need that contact nap or to snuggle and co-sleep for a few hours of the night, or need to be nursed to sleep, or whatever it is that you feel like maybe they're supposed to be too big for. So there's a lot going on here in this phase. Let's kind of break it down a bit, right? Toddlers generally sleep somewhere in the 11 to 14 hour range. And that's total sleep, right? Naps a night. Obviously, your toddler shouldn't be bouncing around a big 3-hour range of total sleep. They'll have their own sweet spot. And that'll, of course, shift as they get older. But they'll have their own sweet spot. For their own sleep needs. And typically that's 10 to 11 hours overnight, just like the older babies. And then, maybe 2 to 3 hours of naps. Some toddlers, 1 napping a day toddlers might do well on a shorter nap, like a 90-minute nap, depending on their age and overall needs. So most toddlers come in napping twice a day, right? At 12 months, and drop down to 1 nap somewhere in the 14, 15 months to about 18 months, which is a pretty big range. And that's just because they're ready for it at a really big range, right? I say maybe average would be 15, 16 months. This is another one of those messy nap transitions that often gets dragged out over weeks, with some days they're 2 nap days, some days are 1 nap days, and that messiness can spill over, of course, into messier bedtimes and kind of just more messiness and fluidity in your sleep timings than normally is ideal. Sort of another side note here is a lot of daycares move toddlers into toddler rooms that are 1 nap a day rooms before they are actually ready to be on 1 nap a day, and so that can kind of add a little more chaos into the mix of that nap transition. It's normal for toddlers to wake at night. And it's still normal for them to need or benefit from night feeds. Not need them in the same way that like a 6-month-old would need them, but it's still very normal for them to happen and for them to have a purpose. From the waking side of things, average wakes are about 2 at 12 months, 1.8 a night, 1.1 at 18 months, and 0.9 at 24 months. So basically 2 going down to 1. And that biggest drop is really between 12 months and 18 months. 18 months to 24 months, it's like 0.2 of a whatever, like of a wake, whatever 0.2 of a wake is. So like realistically, there's not a huge difference in waking between those two. And then, of course, if you have a higher needs kiddo or a kiddo with other things going on that might lead them to more waking, it's still pretty normal to have a toddler in this age group that's waking more in the, like an older baby, more in that 2-3 kind of times a night. And then, of course, we're going to have some frequent waking toddlers for a lot of reasons, some of them being reasons we can optimize, support, and strategize around, some of them being more temperament, some of them being more health related. So, waking is normal in early toddlerhood. Feeding is normal in early toddlerhood, particularly nursing, but I know lots of families whose bottle-fed toddlers still really benefit from some night feeds. And these are slightly different conversations as far as like how long is it okay to do night feeds and what does weaning look like. These are different simply because of the different dynamics of the nurse versus the bottle, and how the milk tends to pool on the teeth. And are we talking about human milk versus formula or cow milk? They're slightly different conversations, but safe to say, definitely 12 to 18 months, feeds are still really common and normal. I do usually recommend weaning off bottles overnight, or at least bottles of formula or cow milk, bottles that aren't water, right? Somewhere around that 12 to 18 months. And simply from a dental health perspective, and then nursing is a whole different conversation. Generally, recommendations for night weaning are after 18 months, just based on language and comprehension and such. But that's a conversation for another podcast episode. Anyway, all this say is night feeds are still common and normal. So we have 2 down to 1 naps. We have some wakes. We have 10 to 11 hours of overnight sleep. We have kiddos napping, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, maybe a 90-minute nap. Depends on your kiddo. Maybe a 3-hour nap. I rarely see it, but, depends on your kiddo. And these are all normal parts of toddler sleep. Now, this is an age where I really, really see activity and stimulation have a huge impact on how ready for sleep a toddler is. And I said that kind of creeps up on you in the older baby episode. But toddlers, oh my goodness, this is a big deal, especially if you have a really active, kind of sensory seeking, very on the go toddler. And so really prioritizing that big body movement, play, laughter, silliness, all that kind of stuff, is going to help them be ready to have the right sensory input, burned off the energy in order to sleep well. So it's not just about sleep pressure, but we got to burn off some energy and get that nervous system ready to downregulate into sleep. I see this a lot with like sillies at bedtime, didn't have enough activity, right? I also see this a lot with naps, wanting really long, late naps, but also wanting early bedtimes. Toddlers are awake for long chunks of time, especially, the 18 months to 24 months ones. And then we'll talk about this more when we talk about 2-year-olds. But, you kind of have to be mindful of what's actually realistic to expect from them so that they are having a chance to build up sleep pressure and burn off their energy. This is also a time where choices, right? Giving toddlers choices, giving them more control, giving them a sense of ownership or autonomy is big, because that is a toddler's job, is to kind of push boundaries and figure out where they are and how does the world work. And what if I do this? What happens? That's part of their learning in this phase. And also to be able to hold space for big emotions, because toddlers have so many emotions and still really limited to no ability to regulate those emotions without support. So these things come to play around sleep, because evenings, I feel like, are sometimes the times these things come out, and they can kind of throw our maybe well-planned and what was working good evening routine into a bit of disarray. Other things that tend to disrupt sleep during this time is toddlers learning to walk. So if you little one is learning to walk, walking is a huge disruptor of sleep. Just the brain kind of consolidating that movement and interaction with the world. And there usually are a few kind of language leaps during this year, and that can be a big disruptor of sleep as they get suddenly tons more words. That brain has been really working hard and really busy, and that can really disrupt sleep. And then molars and canines. I think I actually forgot to mention teething in the older baby episode, which is kind of funny because teething can be such a disruptor for sleep for some families, particularly highly sensitive babies. But those molars and canines, they seem to be very ouchy coming in. And so those can also be a big disruptor of sleep. And then, of course, everyone, when you're sick, you're not going to sleep as well. So there's lots of reasons why sleep might be kind of dynamic in this second year of life. So the 12 to 24 month olds. There is a lot going on. And I think so many families just expect they're a toddler, so now they should be able to sleep through the night and sleep on their own and not need me. And we forget how little they are and how waking is actually still common and normal. And that the toddlers that are waking really frequently, right? Some of that is stuff we can optimize. And some of that might be there's something else going on here. What is that? Let's do a little digging and see if we can find some other areas that need some support. But yeah, toddlers are all about playfulness and fun and pushing boundaries and learning. And we can really use that to help with sleep. And it can kind of make sleep trickier if we're overlooking some of those needs that they have. Thank you for joining me today. I hope this episode left you feeling more informed, confident, and encouraged on your sleep journey. And just a reminder before you go that nothing in this episode is individualized to your specific sleep situation, nor is it to be taken as medical advice. Take what resonates, ignore what doesn't, and check with your healthcare provider about any medical concerns. Take a moment to subscribe to this podcast so that you'll never miss an episode. And take a moment to rate, review, or share an episode you love on social media. All of that helps parents just like you find me, this podcast, and this gentle and responsive sleep information. I'll see you next time.